You're listening to the OCD Stories podcast, hosted by me, Stuart Ralph. The OCD Stories is a podcast dedicated to raising awareness and understanding around obsessive-compulsive symptoms. I do this through interviewing inspired therapists, psychologists, and people who have experienced OCD. Welcome to the OCD Stories. And welcome to episode 476, and in this one I got on Megan, who has kindly agreed to share her OCD story. In particular, we discuss her worries of choking, hyperawareness of swallowing, her compulsions, other themes including existential and religious OCD, accepting and navigating relapses, OCD getting in the way of medication, health anxiety and fears of other mental health conditions, low insight, thoughts of suicide, and much more. And thank you to NoCD for supporting the podcast. NoCD offers effective and convenient therapy available in the US and outside the US. To find out more about NoCD, their therapy plans, if they currently take your insurance, or to download their free app, head to go.treatmyocd.com/the OCD stories, or the link will be in the episode description. So thank you to Megan for her time. It was great to chat with her and hear her story. I appreciate it. And of course, to you guys, I appreciate you as well for listening and supporting. It means a lot. And without further ado, here is Megan. Welcome to the podcast, Megan.
Hi.
It's good to have you on. So as you mentioned before, you've heard the podcast, so you know kind of how the story episodes go. So I'd love to hear your story in as little as much detail as you want to give.
Okay, thank you for having me. So I was diagnosed with OCD in 2019, but I've been in therapy, so having CBT since around the age of 7 on and off. And looking back, I see that I had OCD from a lot younger, but was misdiagnosed for kind of loads of reasons. I think the hardest thing for me with OCD, one of the hardest things for me was it has latched onto so many different, I guess, themes or subtypes, depending on the word you would use. And each one feels as real as the next.
Yeah.
I could never, even when I was diagnosed, telling myself, oh, it's just my OCD wasn't enough. I still believed the thoughts I was having, the physical sensations I was feeling. And each one at the time felt like the worst one. Whether it was harm OCD, like religious OCD, getting stuck in like a kind of existential, almost like crisis, it all felt like the worst type at the time. And the one that I've kind of had since 7, actually, when I was first referred to a psychotherapist, which I now recognize as OCD, I guess you could put it under the bracket of like sensory motor OCD, like the swallowing. I remember just all of a sudden being scared to choke. I was scared I was going to choke on things. I couldn't swallow. I was really aware of my swallowing. I lost lots and lots of weight, and just avoided solid foods.
Okay.
And that happened when I was around 7. I received CBT. I was referred, at first they thought it was an eating disorder because it was to do with my eating, even though I was explaining it's more of a fear of choking. And then I got better. Then it came back again when I was around 11. I got better. It came back again when I was about 16. I got better. And then at 19, I had just... my whole life kind of fell apart. All these kind of little things that had been happening over the years and building up all of a sudden became this one massive thing. And I got so unwell, to the point that I was nearly hospitalized for how much weight I lost. I could not eat anything apart from soup, or like maybe a soft yogurt. I couldn't drink. If I did drink, I would have to take it in one go and drink it all really quickly in case something fell in my drink and I was going to choke on it. My soups would take about 3 hours because I'd be flipping the spoon 80 or 90 times to check nothing's on it, nothing's going to make me choke. We'd be sieving the soup as I was eating it to make sure there's nothing in it. Then I began being scared that I wasn't just going to choke on food, I was going to choke on other things like small objects. So there couldn't be coins around me. There couldn't be small objects around me. Jewelry had to come off. No one could touch me in case they had something on them. Maybe a shirt button fell off. And I then got to the point that I couldn't even swallow my own saliva. So I was having to have tissues with me constantly to spit into, because I couldn't even bring myself to swallow my saliva, in case there was something in my mouth, in case I choked on it. I had like globus sensation, so a constant lump in my throat, which I perceived as something being stuck there. And it was really difficult because I had experienced it before as a child, and looking back, recognized that I had different types of OCD that kind of manifested over the years, like religion, like harm, like many of them. That was so distressing and felt so real. And when I was diagnosed, it was such a relief, because I finally understood that I wasn't this terrible person with these terrible intentions. I was just someone who was unwell.
Yeah.
But at 19, it was just my whole life felt like it came crashing down. And it was really, really difficult after being unwell for so many years to actually become that unwell, because I didn't think that would happen. I thought, oh, I've been unwell for so many years now. When I felt it kind of happening, I thought I kind of knew how it would go. It's going to be like when I was 11. It's going to be like when I was younger, like when I was 16. And it wasn't. It took full control of me. And it felt like there was no escape from it. And it was so real in my head. No one could convince me otherwise, even though it sounds to other people almost irrational. Well, something's fell in my soup. What if I choke on my soup? How could you choke on liquid? You know, people would say. But in my head, it was so real. And this thing that shouldn't be perceived as a threat, something that actually you need to do to live, to eat, become this like horror story in my head, and was so dangerous. And it was like someone telling me to take a bite of something solid was like the equivalent of them telling me to like jump out a plane with no parachute. And like I felt like the risk of eating was the same risk as that. It was like 100%, I'm going to choke, I'm going to die, this is going to happen. And it, you know, the compulsions of checking things, chewing until it was liquid. I could barely hold it in my mouth because of how much I chewed it. And it was excruciating. I remember when I was diagnosed with OCD and I was Googling OCD, it wasn't a type of OCD that came up a lot. So when I was first kind of looking into OCD, and I'm seeing loads of different kind of different types of OCD, I didn't see a lot about a fear of choking. So I got stuck in this loop then that like I've been misdiagnosed. The same way I have been treated for anxiety, but no one quite picked up on the OCD. I don't have OCD, or I'm tricking people. I'm tricking people into thinking I have OCD. I actually don't. I'm actually this really bad person.
Yeah.
And now someone's mentioned OCD, I'm playing on it, and I'm kind of convincing them I have it. Then I kind of got stuck on a loop of I have a condition like psychosis or schizophrenia. And, you know, would be sitting there in complete silence to make sure I couldn't hear anything. Everyone had to sit in silence and listen. And it just felt like it went from one thing to another, to another, to another. But for me, my most challenging kind of type of OCD, although they were all so difficult and so real at the time, the eating one I found so incredibly challenging because it affected my health so badly too, like my physical health, to the point that, you know, it was potentially going to need medical intervention. And to me, that was so scary, especially with health anxiety.
Yeah.
It was like the worst thing that could have happened to me.
Yeah, because you would have been losing a lot of weight, right, at this point.
Yeah.
So they would have had to intervene, similar in the way with eating disorders.
Exactly. And I always had this fear of I have an eating disorder, it's not OCD. Again, I've been misdiagnosed, I'm lying to people. So when the doctor said it's kind of at the point where if you weren't telling us you were in active treatment right now, you're kind of, your mum wasn't assuring us that you're gradually eating, we would hospitalize you because the weight you are and the effect it was having on me physically.
Yeah.
And that to me instantly then linked back to eating disorders. Like, oh, that's what I have. This isn't OCD because OCD, I tell myself OCD can't hurt me. It's a thought, it can't hurt me. And then all of a sudden it was hurting me, not in the way I thought it was, but it was hurting me physically. It was actually having an effect on me. So this kind of big bad bully in my head that I said, it's just in your head, it can't do anything to you. All of a sudden it was doing something to me in a different way to what I thought it was going to do something to me.
Yeah.
But it had affected me physically, and that was really scary for me. And I went through quite intensive ERP. At the time, I chose not to take medication, and I, quote unquote, recovered. But it was still always there. I still had moments during COVID. I got very unwell again. My hands were bleeding. I would be putting hand sanitizer on them, and they would be excruciating. But I had to do it. My mum would come to the door and I would wipe her down. I would put a mask on, wipe her down with antibac and make her take everything off at the door. And I could feel it was my OCD. I could recognize it then having the diagnosis, but that wasn't enough to stop it. And it always was kind of there. And I always said to myself, I have to coexist with it. It doesn't ever go away. There's not like a cure for it. But I sometimes think I misinterpreted coexisting with it for actually letting it still have some control over me. I still gave in to certain compulsions. I still avoided certain foods. I never ate fish because of fish bones. I never ate anything with bones. I never ate chewy things. I still avoided lots and lots of things to do with my eating in particular. And then this year in October, I became quite unwell again with my OCD. I had a relapse. And for me, that was really, really hard because I found so much joy and motivation in listening to podcasts, watching people on YouTube, listening to TED Talks about people who have recovered from OCD. And I kind of went from feeling like that's me to all of a sudden relapsing and becoming so unwell again and just being so confused how this could happen. How could this come back? I had it at bay, if you would like to say, for 4 years. And then all of a sudden, I felt the thoughts start creeping in. I noticed myself avoiding things like chicken. I noticed myself not eating my lunch at work. Then it went from not eating my lunch at work to not eating at home. Then it went to I've swallowed this solid thing and I feel a lump in my throat. And I'm convincing myself that there's food stuck. And you telling me I'm breathing and I'm talking so there can't be anything stuck there isn't convincing me. And chewing my food until it's liquid, I couldn't chew it anymore. It would be coming out my mouth basically. And even then I swallowed it and thought I was choking on it and it was stuck. Then drinking became harder. Then swallowing saliva became harder. And, to go through that relapse was really difficult. And I think I loved hearing people's positive experiences about OCD and hearing about recovery because that's what a lot of people talk about. They want to give you that hope of you can get better. And I think I didn't hear necessarily a lot of conversations about relapse because it's not necessarily the stories people want to share. They want to be hopeful. And then when I did start hearing people talk about relapse, I actually found that hopeful because I was like, oh, I'm not the only person who thought they kind of eradicated this horrible illness and it came back. I'm not weak. my life isn't over. I just have a health condition like many other health conditions, and it's came back.
Yep.
And I just need to fight it exactly like I fought it before. And each time I fight it, the weaker I'm going to get, the more I'm going to beat it down. And it's not going to be able to keep taking control of me. I'm going to be stronger than it each time. But relapse, I think, is a really hard thing to accept
Yeah.
when you feel like you have been so well for so long. And it's been difficult, trying to find treatment during relapse because so many people need that support that it can be really hard to find it because of how many people are, receiving treatment for many conditions. It can be really hard when you feel like you need like immediate support and you can't get it.
Yeah.
And it can feel quite scary as well.
Yeah. Can, yeah. Yeah. Were you able to find support? That's my cat. Were you able to find support fairly quickly?
So I decided to, as well as looking for support for like ERP, I decided to start medication for the first time. I was very scared before due to my OCD a lot. Actually, I have a terrible fear of addiction, a terrible fear of medication. I would sometimes drink one glass of alcohol and convince myself I'm an alcoholic. And for days I'm testing myself. Can I go without a drink? Do I feel like I need to drink? Do I have this urge to have a drink? I would be testing and kind of assessing my symptoms just to see if they feel like I need to drink something because I've become an addict from one drink. Yeah. So although doctors were so clear in telling me SSRIs don't do that to you, they don't have that effect, my OCD was like, no, you're lying. You are lying. And even if it hasn't had that effect on other people, that's the effect it's going to have on me.
Yeah.
So I avoided medication for my whole life. And then this time around, I kind of got to the point where I felt like I don't want to, I guess I don't want what happened before to happen again. I don't want to be in the house for months and months again. I don't want to lose contact with everyone around me. I really, really want to try and take control before it gets to that point. And I just felt like this time around, I wanted to use medication to help me do that.
Yeah.
Because it's been being in therapy since the age of 7 has been quite difficult.
Yeah.
And in some ways a little bit traumatizing just because it's been so many years of my life that I should have been enjoying and being a kid and having fun and going out as a teenager. I didn't have that. I lost so many years of my life to OCD. And I'm not saying by any means you need medication to recover and for me to get better. I just felt like at this moment in my life, I felt like it was the option for me. Just because I'd spent so many years unwell and it was something I never tried, and I thought it was worth trying and that I deserved, I guess, to give myself that chance of not letting the OCD win again, not letting the fear of addiction, the fear of developing psychosis from it, the fear of developing schizophrenia from it, these fears that are so unlikely. I had to think, am I going to let that win? Or am I going to let my OCD win? Because right now, my OCD is stopping me eating again. I've lost a ridiculous amount of weight. I'm eating a soup and a yogurt a day. The OCD is winning here. I have to choose to fight back almost.
Yeah.
So I decided to start taking medication only a couple of days ago, actually.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Awesome. And well, good for you. And I guess because of your fears, taking the medication is also an exposure. So even if the meds, let's say, didn't work, obviously hope they do, but let's say they didn't, they'll still work in some way because it's an exposure. And in that sense, it should help.
Exactly. Yeah. I noticed that as soon as I took it, I ate my soup a little bit easier. I wasn't obsessively looking at the spoon. I wasn't chewing it. And I knew it wasn't the medication. I knew it didn't do anything immediately. But I think it was for that moment, my OCD realized, like, oh, wow, she's fighting back here. I can't completely consume her. She's actually pushing back.
Yeah.
And I think it takes a bit of that power away from it, a bit of that control when it sees you do that exposure.
Yeah.
And of course, it did what it does best, and it tried to latch onto something else. And,
Yeah.
you know, I spent the whole day sitting in silence. Can I hear anything? I thought I heard something. It's made me develop psychosis. It's made me develop schizophrenia. It's made me develop a different condition. It's immediately done something to my brain. And I was just sitting in complete silence, listening for every little noise I could hear. And even though everyone around me was saying, this is your OCD, it's gone from your eating, which is still being affected, but it's kind of let go of that a little bit and gone on to something else now because you have done, like you said, this massive exposure of finally taking this medication and it doesn't want to let you win. It doesn't want to let you get better. I personify my OCD a lot to kind of help me in recovery, you know, visualizing it, seeing it as this kind of bully. It helps me feel like I've got this thing that doesn't want me to get better, and I need to fight it. I need to show it that I'm stronger than it. And that has helped me in recovery, kind of actually seeing it as this like big bully that is telling me all these horrible things and making me believe I'm a horrible person, but I'm not. And I can beat it. It's not stronger than me. At times it feels like it is, but it's not. And I think taking the medication showed it you're not stronger than me. Just for my own experience, that was me showing it that because of my fears of medication. And I felt it latching on to the fears of what it's made me develop. And I didn't recognize that as OCD, even though everyone around me was saying this is clearly your OCD. I was like, no, this is different. This is really different now. And I think that's the hard thing sometimes about medication for OCD is that you hear that it's a great relief and it can really help, which it definitely can. I'm sure it definitely can. But the OCD still finds a way to make that a miserable experience for you. Instead of feeling like, wow, this could be the road to recovery for me. It's something I've never tried before. This could be a really positive experience. And if it's not, I try something else. The OCD can't even let you have that. It takes that away from you. It just wants to take every little thing away from you until it is just you and it left. And it's just narrowing and narrowing down every part of your life. It doesn't, it's not satisfied with, oh, I gave this up. It's not satisfied with, oh, I do this compulsion 3 times. It will say, okay, not 3 times now. Let's make it 5. Let's make it 8. Let's make it 10. Oh, you gave this up. Well, I'm not happy that you're comfortable with this. You need to give that up too. It just keeps making things smaller and smaller for you until you feel like there's nothing left. And for me, I decided this time I don't want there to be nothing left. I don't want to let it do that this time. And when I heard people talk about relapse, hearing people say similar things really helped me. It made me realize I'm not the only person that's become unwell again. And I'm seeing people talk about relapse as they're going through it, but they're motivated. They're saying they can beat this. It feels scary and it feels real, but they've beat it before. They can beat it again. And hearing those words, like you can beat it again, was so comforting to me, because every time I become unwell with OCD, I'm convinced this time I'm not going to recover, because it feels so real and so scary, and no one can really take it away from you. People can help you and be there for you and support you, and you can have therapy and do exposures, but it's you that has to do those exposures. You actually have to be the one to engage and do it. And sometimes that feels like an impossible task with OCD. It feels like the scariest thing in the whole world. So it's really hard, because you know the journey that's ahead when you've been unwell before. It's not like this new thing and you don't know kind of what's going to happen. When you've been unwell with OCD, you know the fight that's ahead to get there. And it's scary. And I think for myself, you can really feel like I'm giving up this time. I'm exhausted. I've tried. It's came back. I give up. I felt like giving up so many times. And I guess hearing people say, I'm not giving up, I'm fighting it, it's not going to win, for me was like, yeah, I'm not giving up either. Actually, I'm not going to give up either. I'm going to fight this too. I deserve to fight it. I deserve to have a life. I deserve to be happy. I deserve to eat. I deserve to not be terrified of everything around me. I deserve a chance for my brain to, to have a bit of peace and everything not be so loud and so scary. But it's hard to push yourself to that place, especially when the OCD is so loud, and the physical sensations like the lump in my throat, when someone's telling you there's nothing there, but you can actually feel this physical lump in your throat. And you're not imagining it. There really is a feeling there. It's like, well, how can you tell me there's nothing there? I can feel it. And the OCD will then, say, yeah, you can feel it. That's what it is. It's food. There's food in your throat. You're choking. Oh, but I'm breathing. Yeah, but you're still choking. But I'm talking. Yeah, but there's still food there. It will just, everything you say, it will fight back at you. And you almost, how can I believe this thing isn't real? It convinces you. I truly believe that what I'm thinking and feeling is real. My brain wouldn't play tricks on me like this. My brain wouldn't convince me this thing. It can't. It can't. This has to be real. It's different this time. Yesterday it wasn't, but today it's different. It feels different. Oh, I know it happened last week, but this is different. Every time it feels different and it feels real. But the thing with OCD is it never is. It never is different and it never is real. It's that same almost devil on your shoulder telling you these horrible things and convincing you that these dreadful things are happening or that you're this dreadful person. But even though you know that, it doesn't feel like enough to convince you. Even though deep down you know, it's not enough. That's not enough for the OCD. It has to make you believe it. And I think that's been my hardest thing over all these years, is how real every type, if you say, or theme of OCD has felt. Everyone has felt real. Everyone has felt just as bad as the other. Everyone has consumed me to an extent when I've had it. And when you finally get better, it feels like such a relief. It feels so good. It's like the best feeling in the world to just feel like you're living a normal life and a life that you deserve. And again, like I said earlier, I think that's why relapse is hard, because it feels like all the work you've done has been taken away, but actually it hasn't. It's still all there, and you're still gonna beat it. It's still not gonna win. It's just, okay, it's trying to creep back in. It's trying to do what it does best. I'm not gonna let it. I'm gonna beat it again. And it's gonna become weaker, because each time I show it I'm not scared, the weaker it's going to get. And it doesn't feel like it is, and you don't believe it. And hearing someone say it doesn't make you believe it.
Yeah.
But it really is. You do beat it. You overcome it. It's just hard sometimes to accept that you have to overcome this thing.
Yeah.
But you still find a way, and you do it. And when you do it, it's so worth it. I always felt so happy that I didn't give up. I always felt like I couldn't take it anymore. Suicide felt an escape. I was a burden to everyone around me, because I think when you have a lot of people around you, like if you have family members, if you have a partner, if you have a close group of friends, for me, my type of OCD, they were kind of brought into it. They had to sit with me for 5 hours while I tried to eat a bowl of soup. They had to count things with me. They were kind of brought into my OCD. It wasn't just me fighting, it was all of us fighting it. And that led to me feeling like I'm a burden, and I'm a terrible person, and I'm putting them through this. And, those type of thoughts make you feel like, well, maybe if I wasn't here, I wouldn't be going through this pain, this mental struggle, and they wouldn't be going through it either. But then, when you start to recover, you're so thankful that you didn't give up.
Yeah.
You're so thankful that you fought it, and that you didn't let it win. And even though it felt like there was never ever a way out, sometimes I would wake up every morning and it would just be there constantly. And I felt like there was no escape. Actually, there was an escape. There was an escape for such a long time, for so many years. And even though it came back, it doesn't mean there's not an escape this time. And I've already shown myself there's an escape. So I already have something that I didn't have before. I have recovery behind me, and knowing that I can do it. And that's made a really big difference this time. And I think that's why I kind of seeked to find people speaking about relapse, because I wanted to hear people say, I relapsed and it was hard, but I got there. I got there. Yeah, it came back and it felt like my world had ended again. But actually, I still got through that again. Relapse wasn't the end of it for me. I still kept fighting it. And that was really big for me at this moment in time, hearing people say that, because now I'm fighting it. And I feel like I can do it. I feel like, yeah, I'm not going to let you win. And that's been, massive for me, and massive in wearing it down just a little bit more each and every day. Yeah. But, it's incredibly hard, because it really does convince you that what you're thinking and feeling is true. It has the ability to convince you you've really hurt that person. It has the ability to make you get stuck on a complete loop about what happens when you die. It has the ability to convince you that eating is dangerous, and I need to chew my soup, and I can't eat solid food, and I can't drink this drink right now because there's something in my throat, and if I drink it, it's going to move what's there, and it's going to get lodged, and I'm going to choke. I can't swallow my saliva because there's something there, and when I swallow it, I'm going to feel the lump, and I'm going to know there's something there. and no one's going to be able to save me. What if I start choking? It just snowballs, and it's all so real. It feels so, so real in the moment. Um, and that for me has always been the hardest thing, how it just convinces me. And there's just I can't rationalize any of my thoughts. I can't rationalize any of them. And it's so scary in that moment.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like, because obviously there's varying levels of insight in OCD. There's some people are like, I know this is mad, but I just, what if? And then there's like you're saying of, no, I believe it. It's real. And that can make therapy trickier. Well, it's not a deal breaker, but it just makes it that a little bit maybe more challenging. But yeah, no, thank you for sharing all that. I agree with what you're saying. And on the sort of suicide thing, you mentioned, I know you know this, but I'm just clarifying. So when you mentioned about you've had the thoughts of, well, if I wasn't here, I wouldn't be suffering, my family wouldn't be suffering. I just wanted to add to that. They would be, but in a different way, because obviously suffering with the loss of you. And in some ways, that's obviously a much worse suffering than, way worse suffering than dealing with OCD for them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's it's not an escape. I felt like it was an escape, but it's not an escape. It's just my life being over. It's not an escape. I don't get a relief from the OCD. I'm not here to have that relief. That's how I started telling myself those things, being that blunt with myself. You feel like it's an escape, but it's not. And you feel like it's going to make people feel better, but it's not. It's actually going to put people through a level of pain probably more than what you're feeling right now. And when I started convincing myself those things and rationalizing those thoughts, again, it felt like the OCD was getting beaten a little bit. It was getting just beaten a bit. I realized it's not that I don't want to live, it's that I just don't want to live like this. It wasn't that I didn't want to live. I didn't want to live like that. But in order to not live like that, I had to, come to terms with the diagnosis and accept that this is this horrible thing and it's going to do this, but I have to beat it. And you feel like there's no recovery. You do at the time. Sometimes you feel like, how could I get better from this? I don't even remember who I was a couple months ago.
Yeah.
What do you mean there's a way out? But there's always a way out.
Yeah.
There's so many different treatments. There's so many different routes. And each time you show it, you're not scared. You don't necessarily feel that you're fighting it just by saying, I'm not scared. It doesn't it doesn't feel like it makes a difference sometimes. But actually, eventually, all those times add up and it can start to make a difference. It can start to see that it's not going to beat you the way it wants to. Almost.
Yeah.
But it is hard when it convinces you, and the what ifs. The what ifs are, terrifying, because what if existential what ifs for me were always terrifying, because I had all these what if questions that no one could really answer. What if there's not a heaven? No one can really tell you. What if there's a hell? No one can really tell you. So those what ifs for me were terrible, because I would be seeking out this answer that I just couldn't find. I could not find the answer because there's not an answer. And what I was kind of taught in ERP and CBT is having to sit with uncertainty. And for someone with OCD, that's the worst thing in the world, because you doubt everything. And the thought of having a bit of uncertainty is terrifying. I need you to reassure me 100 times about this thing. So uncertainty is like not even an option sometimes, because no, you need to reassure me right now 1 billion times over that, about what I'm thinking. So then to be told I have to sit with uncertainty was terrifying. But gradually learning to do it did kind of make those what ifs not as scary. What if that? Okay, what if that? What if that? Okay, what if? What if, I had to respond to the what if questions with, yeah, what if? And it was terrifying. It was so terrifying. And it would, at times send me spiraling, having to sit with that. But eventually it started to help a bit. And I'm trying, to remember all those things now that helped and reinforce them, because there is recovery always. It's just about reminding yourself that, there is always recovery. It always gets better. If it hasn't got better, it's not the end. It feels like it is, but it's not. If it hasn't got better, it is not the end yet. It's just this horrible thing that tries to take your life away from you. But it won't. It may do it temporarily. It may feel like it's going to do it forever, but it won't. It won't do it. And that's, really, really nice to hold on to. And I loved hearing people when I first got diagnosed say that, because I felt like they must have felt like I did one day. And now they're standing here talking about it and saying that it doesn't have to do that. You will beat it. And for me, that was like the most comforting thing I could hear, because I felt like I couldn't. And then I became one of those people that felt like, oh, wow, hang on, I've kind of got my life back. And if you go for a relapse, I think it's so important to hold on to that. And that's what I've been trying my hardest to do through this period of time.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, you're better off now in the relapse than you were when you first started, because you've got so many skills and tools, and you're definitely not at day one or, the beginning, but your brain can feel like that, right?
Yeah.
So you may have said it and I may have missed it, but with the fear of choking, did you ever have any sort of traumatic incident where you choked, or where as a young kid?
So I didn't actually. I've never, choked as in like I've properly choked. Someone's needed to intervene. I picked up on a lot of things when I was young. I picked up on a lot of things happening around me and would kind of fixate on them. And someone in my family who was young had like a condition. They had a cleft palate and they had another condition to do with their throat. And I don't remember it vividly, but I remember something happened. They I can't remember if they did choke or if they just had trouble swallowing. I can't actually remember, because I was 7 or 8. I was really young. But I remember picking up on this thing had happened in this conversation. And I started to think, well, what if that happens to me? What if I have trouble swallowing? And then I kind of became fixated on it. And the swallowing became an issue. I became scared to eat food. I lost so much weight. And that's kind of, for me, how a lot of my kind of types of OCD or triggers began. Not all the time. Sometimes they just came out of the blue. There was no reason for the thought I had. It just came into my head. And it scared me so much that I got stuck on it. And then it just never left. But other times, there was something that kind of triggered that thought. And I couldn't let the thought go. And I guess the same way someone might hear someone has cancer and think, oh, that's terrible, that's really sad, but not get stuck in it. I will get stuck and convince myself I have cancer. I will go to the doctors consistently every day. I will contact the GP every week. I feel like I feel a lump in my neck. I'm scared to go to the bathroom in case I see blood. When my brother got cancer, I got stuck on this fear of cancer, because it was like, wow, this thing that I'm scared of and that people are telling me, you're being irrational to worry about it. Don't worry about it. You're fine. All of a sudden someone had it. who was really close to me. And at the time I felt selfish because I was like, why are you worrying about yourself right now? Your brother's not well and you're worried that you have it. I felt selfish at the time. I felt like I was a terrible person that my head had even let me worry about myself for a minute when this was actually happening. But I couldn't help that my head was stuck on this loop and fear about it.
Of course.
So sometimes there's been triggers, but other times it come out the blue. I remember with like harm OCD, I was walking past just a group of people, and I think one of them kind of like accidentally bumped into me. And I was only young, but I must have felt where like I made contact with them. And I turned around to my mum and said, Mum, I think I've been shot. For that minute, I actually thought that the contact I felt was that someone had a gun and they had shot me. Yeah. And she was like, what are you talking about? You're not bleeding. You're not hurt. What? Like she couldn't even fathom what was happening. And I genuinely was like, no, Mum, I'm worried I've been shot. Like, can you check my body? Like, I'm going to lift my top up. Check. Is there any mark on me? Maybe I'm not bleeding, but maybe it's there. Like maybe the bullet's stopping me bleeding. And I genuinely thought something had happened to me. And then I got stuck on this thing of, are people harming me? Am I going to harm other people? And just things like that. There was no reason for me to think that night.
Yeah.
But having contact with someone just made this thought of, did they just do that? Did I just get shot? Did I get stabbed? Did someone just hurt me? And then it spiraled and spiraled to the point that it completely consumed me. And that I felt the same about religious OCD. I felt like going to a church school made me exposed to religion from quite a young age. And, you know, every day there was things about religion. RE every day. Even other topics were brought back to religion. You know, topics like history, English, they would all have a link back to religion. Assemblies would all be about religion, Bible readings, church every Friday. And I just started to become stuck on this loop about God. Is God watching me? When does God not watch me? What happens when I die? What if I go to hell? Is there a heaven? And it becomes so obsessive. And then it become like existential as well, thinking about, well, why am I here? Why am I even born? I didn't want to be born. Now I have to die. I didn't even want to be born. And now I have to face the fear of death and what death is. So for me, sometimes I have no reason why the thoughts came. They just came. But other times I know it's just tiny little things that happened, tiny things. And where I guess someone without OCD could just hear that thing or see that thing and just let it go, my brain picked up on it and just got stuck on a loop. And it just snowballed and I couldn't let it go. No matter how much I tried at the time, it wasn't enough because the OCD was convincing me these thoughts and these things. So it has varied for me of what my triggers have been. Sometimes I feel like I can almost find the root of them and sometimes I can't. But I find that trying to find the root of things for me almost becomes obsessive.
Yeah.
It becomes almost like a compulsion, trying to find the root and checking things. So I try to sit comfortably with the fact that I can't find an answer to why I've got this right now. I can't find an answer to why I'm having this thought. I can't find an answer to why this, like subtype or theme of OCD has decided to pop into my head. But that's okay because it's OCD and it's not rational. It's not logical. It's not, I'm not always going to find a rational and logical answer to it. I just need to accept that and just kind of remind myself of that, really.
Yeah, exactly that. There's not always a clear trigger. I was just worried because I've heard it before, obviously, with the choking where someone has choked and then now there's a trauma response and they worry. But of course, OCD doesn't need a trauma, an initial trauma. It can just come out of the blue. So couple of questions at the end then. If you could pick up the phone and call the 16-year-old you, what would you tell her?
I would tell her that there's an escape, and it's not the escapes that you're thinking of. It's the escape of there's treatment, there's support around you. Use it. Don't be scared to tell people your thoughts. You're not a bad person. You think you're a bad person, so you're not being honest with the people around you about what's in your head, but you can be. You're not a bad person. You're not going to prison. You're not getting someone in trouble. These are just thoughts. And in a few years, all these thoughts are going to make sense because you're going to be diagnosed with this condition, and you're going to be really scared and think, what is that? I don't understand. How does it work? What is this? How does that relate to this? How does it relate to this? How could it give me all these thoughts? But I would tell her that everything is going to start making sense, and that you're going to live that life that you always wanted. You're going to, you're going to find happiness. You're going to find peace. It's not always going to feel this bad, and you don't believe it right now. And if I was talking to myself, I wouldn't believe myself. I'd be like, you're lying. I don't trust you.
Yeah.
But actually you're gonna be fine. You don't feel like you are, but you're really gonna be fine. And when you get this diagnosis, things are gonna make so much sense for you.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. Good call. And then you've got a billboard. What do you want written on that billboard?
I always say, I'd probably write on it, because this is something I say, it's not me, it's the OCD.
Okay.
Yeah. It's something I always say to myself. And I think I'd love to put that on a billboard across anywhere I could, for people who have OCD to see it and just remember, do you know what? This isn't me. I feel like it's me. It's a condition I have, but it's not me. This is not a reflection of me and my morals and my beliefs and who I am. And these fears that I'm fearing, I don't need to be scared of. It's not me. It's the OCD. It's something I say to myself a lot. And it's just something that reminds me, this isn't you. This isn't what you believe. This isn't a fear you need to have. This is your condition. It kind of separates me from the OCD, because sometimes they become one and you forget who you are without it. But it's important to remember, it's not you, it's your OCD. It's a separate thing. It's a condition that you have. It's not you as a person. Yeah.
Good. Yeah. And you don't need to listen to it. So perfect. So is there anything else you wish you could have said or shared today?
No, I think that's pretty much it. Just always remembering it does get better, even when it feels like there's no way this is going to get better. This time is different, or this is my first time experiencing OCD. I don't see how there's an escape. There always is. Always. Yeah. Without doubt, there is always an escape. Even if it's a difficult road to recovery, you still reach the end of it. Always. If it's still bad, it's not the end. It's not the end yet. If it's still bad, there's good there. I just think it's nice to be reminded, I think, of that, because sometimes you forget it. You let yourself forget that.
Yeah, 100% like it. So that saying of it's darkest before dawn, and the sun always rises, as cliche and cheesy as that is, it's a fact, and things always get better. It just takes time and application of skills and therapies and meds and whatever else. So look, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
I appreciate your honesty, and you sharing where you're at and where you've been. It's been awesome to hear.
Thank you. I really appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this week's podcast. And thank you to our Patreons who helped make this episode possible. And if you would like to find out more about Patreon and the rewards and benefits, then there will be a link in the episode description. If you enjoy the OCD Stories podcast and would like to support us, please subscribe and rate the show wherever you listen to the podcast. And thank you to NoCD for supporting our work. And if you want to find out more about NoCD, head to go.treatmyocd.com/the OCD Stories or click the link in the episode description. And quick disclaimer, guys, this podcast is not therapy. It is not a replacement for therapy. Please seek treatment from a trained professional. And until we speak, take care.